Good morning, everyone. It'll just be a few moments before we get started. If you have any questions, just put them into the comment section. If you have any questions, just go ahead and add them to the comment area. Got a few questions this week, so we'll be going through those in just a few moments. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning. I'm Sunnyvale Mayor Larry Klein, and welcome to the 32nd installment of my virtual office hour address. You know, people continue to say that they really appreciate these weekly sessions with the mayor. You know, it's a chance for me to talk to you, to answer some of your questions, give you updates and general words of encouragement. I'll continue to do this through the end of shelter in place and possibly a lot longer. But For me, it's really a great chance to kind of connect with people, and I know that we're all, remote, whether or not that's remote learning or remote work or just remote from our friends and family. But it gives a chance for me to kind of touch base with everyone, and people continue to say that they really appreciate it. Thank you for allowing me to continue to represent you and work for you and work for Sunnyvale in an ever changing and extraordinary time, to say the least. I hope everyone's doing well, staying healthy. Please remember to take care of yourself, both physically and mentally. It's the days are getting shorter. I'm finding myself very tired at the end of the day now, more so than before, just because we don't have as many hours of light, and that does affect people as you go through your day. So, keep following the county health order. You know, people, you have done a lot to stop the spread of the virus, and continue doing whatever you can to wash your hands, don't touch your face, reduce the number of people that you're coming in contact with on a daily basis. And of course, most importantly, wear your mask. Do say practice safe social distancing, but wearing your mask, it does help. It's mandatory, and from that standpoint, if you need a mask, definitely feel free to reach out. I have masks that I've donated, and I actually have, from an artistic standpoint, you'll see from yesterday's, the Silicon Valley Council of Nonprofits had a contest and kind of a fundraiser, and so the mayor created a diorama of pumpkins, of which masks were highly promoted. So slowing the spread of the virus is really important. You know, and we're not out of the woods yet. It's you can be a carrier of the virus, or you can meet someone that's a carrier of the virus, and ultimately they could be asymptomatic. They couldn't show symptoms, and so wearing a mask is the least that you can do to help prevent yourself from getting the COVID, and then conceivably protecting other people in case you have been infected and don't even know it. We're now 221 days after the March 16th county health order started the shelter in place, and in an attempt to slow the spread of COVID-19, and we've been fairly good. We'll talk about the numbers a little bit later, but since that declaration, a lot has happened. A lot seems to happen every day. I have daily press conferences to watch, seminars to attend, conference calls to confer and advocate on your behalf. And hopefully, that's made a difference as far as Sunnyvale is concerned, and conceivably as far as, the region is concerned. So let's go ahead and talk about what's happened at the federal, state, county, and city level over the last week or so. So let's go back about a week and a half. Council met last Tuesday night, and it started with a study session that talked about public safety policies and practices. So this was the kind of the summation, at least as far as 2020 is concerned, of the 5 Unity events that we had. And so the chief talked about what we learned and what we've changed within the department over the last 4 months, almost 5 months now. Ultimately, what it came down to is, we've changed a lot of transparency policies. We've, released a lot of information, like the 10 years of officer-involved shootings. We also have done efforts to talk about the number of complaints against public safety in the last 5 years. And on that standpoint, we have about 100,000 interactions on a yearly basis between public safety and the public and our residents. And there's normally about, let's say, 8 to 15 complaints a year. And so not that we can't improve, but definitely, and some of those complaints are actually internal complaints from a different officer who thought that some contact was was not up to our policy. So you know, we've been very open and transparent as far as that's concerned, putting forth, you know, what our policies are for body-worn cameras, for our drone program, all those sorts of things, and we'll continue looking at ways to reform our public safety department. Other things that we did that last Tuesday night was we approved the issuance of bonds. So from a council standpoint, and we've been going through, let's say, the process of approving the Civic Center, and we'll talk a little bit about the Civic Center project in a little bit. But the phase one portion of that, we approved the issuance of up to $160 million in bonds from a city standpoint, and it's actually a good time to get money. So interest rates are very low, and going through that process, we found that our city rating had actually increased quite a bit since. So it had been downgraded about 2 and a half years ago, because of our retirement, because of our retirement liabilities, because of some of the things that we've done to set aside money to pay down our retirement liabilities in the last few years, actually caused us to get a Moody's rating of AA+. So you know, from a city standpoint, we're in good financial state. You know, even with the unknown quantity of what the COVID pandemic is going to look like going forward, and we'll talk a little bit about the budget in a little bit. But we approved the issuance of those bonds, and it's very low rates, and actually we get a much better return on our investments for what other money that the city holds. And the other thing that we did was approve. We received the housing study report that we kicked off several years ago, and approved kind of a housing study and implementation schedule. So we prioritized multiple things, you know, one of which was protecting at-risk affordable senior housing. And so that mainly looked at the mobile home communities. And we'd hoped, and it was kind of split amongst council, I'd hoped that we'd been able to do a rent stabilization ordinance. Instead, we'll start off with a memorandum of understanding between the different mobile home community landlords and residents as far as what the interest rates or what the rate increase on spaces for mobile homes should be on a yearly basis, as well as looking at what vacancy increase. So when someone moves out of their community, what the vacancy space rate should go up after that vacancy. So that was one of the things that we looked at. We looked from a supply side standpoint of increasing the inclusionary percentage for ownership. So right now, when a multifamily condo unit complex is built, 12.5% of those units are set aside for below market rate for residents that can qualify to purchase at a much lower rate. So depending upon whether or not they're low income residents, but basically they can apply and get those units at far less, and that's basically something that stays with that property. So it's a deed restriction that will stay as lower income for sale home within the community. And so we've talked about increasing that to 15%, which we can do fairly quick, and so that's one of the things that we're looking at. It's also promoting ADUs, which, you know, I think ADUs are a great way to sprinkle new residences within our single-family neighborhoods, upzoning land to facilitate, you know, increased residential, and so that we're looking at that, you know, in downtown. We've already been doing that. Lawrence Station, conceivably along El Camino Real, and even Moffett Park are some of the specific plans that we're currently evaluating. Doing kind of a demand side housing policy option. So looking at a right to lease ordinance for all of our apartments. So that's actually important that I've heard stories in the past about landlords that are raising the rent multiple times in a year. And so having a single raise of an apartment rent every year makes sense. And then even, you know, some of the things that some of the other cities have been doing as far as establishing a safe RV parking program, other tenant protection issues. So we're looking at that, and that's kind of prioritizing a certain kind of laundry list of items, and then staff will come back and looking at the implementation schedule for getting those done, and hopefully we can get those done fairly quickly. And then what we talked about was the budget, and so our budget, that meeting went until past 1:30 a.m. And we don't have many of those meetings, but especially at the year end, a lot of times we start backing things up. So our first quarter budget update, when we approved the budget in June, we talked about every quarter, our finance department would come back and give us an update on where we stand. And the 2019-2020 financials were very positive. We ended the city with a year-end, a positive year-end revenue, so above what we expected. So that's actually very good from a general fund standpoint. And then, some of the things that, and we'll get that report at the upcoming council meeting this coming Tuesday. But some of the numbers actually weren't as bad as what we were expecting. So, from that standpoint, the TOT is down, but we actually had forecasted that the transportation occupancy tax for hotels was down. Sales tax was down, but not as much as we thought. And then property taxes have actually been up so far this quarter. So, there's still a lot of turnover for sale for homes, and what we're seeing from that standpoint is a lot of property tax, which is better for the city, of course, and for our schools. And then last Tuesday was also, from a state standpoint, they declared that Santa Clara County moved to the orange tier. So last Wednesday, October 14th, new operations were finally allowed. And Santa Clara County health officials had already announced that they had been preparing for indoor dining and, at restaurants, as well as in gatherings and places of worship. So those laws, those directives had already been put in place for last Wednesday. And so last Wednesday, indoor dining could happen up to 25% of what could be allowed. And then as far as seating is concerned, and for religious gatherings, they could also have up to 25% indoor dining or indoor seating, and then up to 100 people. So it depended upon how big that religious facility was. And then there are other changes as far as, bars are allowed to open as long as they do outdoor seating. Before it was only bars, restaurants, that they had to have food as their main focus. But now actually bars can open, and for outdoor seating. And then, movie theaters can open for up to 25% seating. The only problem with that, of course, is they can't have concessions. Much like religious, from a religious standpoint, you can't have a big party. You can't have food being served. Same thing as movie theaters. They can't, even though, you're seated and not moving around and not interacting. The county doesn't allow concessions. And so AMC is all ready to open. However, one of the key components of their financial model is selling food. And so right now they're not able to sell food. And so they're holding off on opening. I talked to the manager of AMC, and they're just waiting at this point for those restrictions to be lifted. And once those are lifted, AMC will be opening. And some of the other things, outdoor gatherings for like religious operations can now happen up to 200 people. So up to 100 people previously, and now it's up to 200 outdoors, which makes it a little bit easier for some of our religious organizations to hold ceremonies. People still need to wear masks. They still need to provide, safe social distancing. And all of this is kind of pending on whether or not there might be a new spike of infection. So it's easily, we moved into the orange tier, and I think San Francisco just moved into the yellow tier, which is the most open tier right now. But but it's easy to conceivably fall back into the red or purple tier depending upon whether or not there'd be a spike in the number of cases. So from that standpoint, it's be safe and take precautions. If you're feeling ill, don't go to restaurants. Have your food delivered. It's the same thing as if you feel that you are at risk. There's no reason for you to go inside and expose yourself to other people who are having to take off their masks to eat. So that's um, that's critical. From that standpoint, continue to practice safe social distancing. Continue to wear your mask. That will be critical uh, for to make sure that we stay in the orange tier and hopefully move to the yellow tier sometime soon. And then on Monday, Governor Newsom had a press conference, and he spent a lot of time talking about potential COVID-19 vaccines. And so there's a lot of talk about Moderna and Pfizer. And, there's stretch goals that they will have the vaccine ready in November or December. Now, a lot of that is tempered with, expectations on how available that vaccine will be. So, ultimately, there will be about 45 million doses for the whole country, which is the county, 45 million doses for the whole country by the end of the year. Of course, that sounds like a lot of doses available. Of course, this is what they say is a two-phase vaccine. So you're going to have one dose and then a certain number of days later have a second dose. So that immediately cuts the number in half. So that's about 22 million. And then when you start looking at, so because it needs two doses to be effective, and then when you start looking at around the entire country, around the entire nation, that means that California will probably get about 1.5 to 2 million doses. And so uh, it will be prioritized for healthcare workers, for first responders. And then the governor also announced that there will be a task force to basically review the FDA approved vaccines. And so, there's a lot to get through in order to look at distribution as far as looking at, there are definite issues about what temperatures these vaccines need to be kept at. And so distribution and maintaining those within our communities is really important. And so, the governor went through a lot of what those conditions are, and from that standpoint, figuring out what's going to be done, kind of moving forward. So, and he also gave uh, an update on COVID in general. It's from a state standpoint, things are fairly stable. From a nation standpoint, we'll talk about numbers that things have rapidly increased. And then from a fire season standpoint, we still have risks. Last weekend we were supposed to have some bad winds, and which had the potential of starting a lot of new fires. Luckily, we didn't have those winds, and we had some PSPS shutdowns this week, but at least from the Bay Area, everyone's electricity has been turned back on. And then the August complex fire in Mendocino is now about almost 90% contained. So there's been a lot of progress made on continuing to fight those fires. And then from a city standpoint, on Monday there was a rally at Fair Oaks Park, and earlier this year council had approved the renovation of Fair Oaks Park, and that was it had a lot of components, one of which was a magical bridge all access playground. There's new fields, a new dog park, so a new building as far as that's concerned, a new park building. So artwork being added to that park, but from there were concerns, and I dealt with a lot of questions over last weekend, because there were rumors that there was going to be a big sweep of the homeless encampment on Monday. And the city has already been working with Sunnyvale Community Services and downtown streets team trying to place the unhoused residents that are in the park. And also I've heard from parents at King's Academy, so they're will soon be restarting. So King's Academy is the school that's right basically just adjacent to Fair Oaks Park, and they'll be restarting soon for in-person learning. And so some of those parents were concerned about the number of unhoused people at that park. And so, I reached out to multiple people, answered a lot of phone calls, and also, contacted the city manager, city staff. Chief No was very clear. Being homeless is not a crime in Sunnyvale, and DPS is not engaged in any homeless encampment sweeps, nor is there any plan to conduct any homeless encampment sweeps anytime in our city. And so, in talking to city staff, the contractor that was ready to start renovation on Fair Oaks Park, they're basically focusing on a different portion of that park to begin with, and figuring out, giving Sunnyvale Community Services downtown streets team, and of course the county additional time to help find homes, find shelters, find hotels for these unhoused residents. So this is giving us a little more time, but definitely I saw some posts on Facebook, as well as some posts on other social media, and phone calls, emails saying this was going to happen. It was a rumor, and of course it's like a lot of what you read on Nextdoor might have some basis in fact, but a lot of times it's just speculation from a certain standpoint. And so let's go ahead and talk about some upcoming events. So first, the Sunnyvale Pet Parade. So in 2019, just about a year ago, after working with residents for several years, we finally brought back the Sunnyvale Pet Parade, and there's a lot of residents in the city with pets, of course. And so this year, because of COVID-19, the pet parade has gone virtual. And so, if you go to sunnyvalepetparade.com, you can find out how to take part in that competition, as well as kind of celebration as we remote distance. And it's kind of broken into 3 different areas. One of which is just a pet parade. So dress up your pet and submit photos, and then there'll be a family costume parade. So it's not just for pets; it's also for humans. Families are welcome to dress up in Halloween costumes and submit photos. And finally, there's kind of a fun fair for school clubs, bands, scouts, nonprofits, for them to kind of take part also. So from that standpoint, you can take photos of you and your community with, in front of your house, with all kinds of decorations. And the deadline for submission is next Thursday, October 29th. And yes, we're only about a week and a half away from Halloween. And Halloween will be very different this year, but definitely, you can take part, you can dress up, you can still get some of that feeling as far as what Halloween is, and celebrate Sunnyvale and Halloween in Sunnyvale. And then on Saturday the 31st, Halloween, that video will be released. So that's upcoming as far as that's concerned. And then of course tomorrow is it's election season, so I'll be at the Sunnyvale Farmers Market again. You can drop by for a yard sign or a campaign button, pick up some literature. Please remember to get the word out. You can go to larryformayor.com to sign up. You can walk your district. You can deliver flyers. So definitely, it's been fun. Almost going back to normalcy of being able to meet people and talk about their issues or their ideas, and on a face-to-face, even though that both faces are masked, it's been actually good from that standpoint. And then this upcoming Tuesday, council will meet, and it'll probably be another long evening with a lot of things on the agenda. One of the things that we'll be doing is accepting Google's donation to basically improve bicycle and pedestrian facility improvements along Manila Drive and West Moffett Park Drive. And so that is that's the area just south of Moffett Field, and so that area that basically connects Mountain View into Sunnyvale along that drive, and part of the Matilda improvements, so the Matilda Monster improvements that are just wrapping up. As far as that corridor, they created a cycle path along Moffett Park Drive that basically starts at the edge of Moffett Field and continues to Matilda, and then on Matilda, and then east of Matilda, connecting up to Borregas. So those improvements, and that's one of the things about some of our high tech companies. They really want to give back to our community, and so they're basically proposing $2.5 million of improvements to improve kind of cycling along that area. So that's one of the things that, from a council standpoint, we have to approve those sorts of things. But that's one of the things that will be part of the consent agenda. And then we're also set to approve the reach codes. And so we've been talking about reach codes in the past, as far as the reach code program to implement phase one of the residential and non-residential construction reach codes. And so this is for improving our green, basically our green building codes. So making, basically making buildings fully electric, requiring a certain number of EV connections, or at least pre-wired EV locations within multi-family or single-family homes. So all these sorts of things to make it easier for people to be greener in the long run. So whether or not they install the EV chargers immediately, the concept of having everything wired for EV is important for EV chargers, and then making buildings completely electric, whether or not that's residential or office space, so that you have electric water heaters, electric, in kind of removing gas from them, which is really important. And then other things that we'll be doing will be awarding the bid for the Civic Center Phase 1. And so we talked about last week, we had the bond measures that we set up as far as bonds are concerned. But that's for kind of the funding, a portion of it. And from a city standpoint, we've been setting aside money for a while now. We've sold some office space, office land that to help fund the Civic Center. But awarding the kind of this first phase one is phase one includes a new city hall. It also includes kind of relocating, and it's kind of expanding city hall. So there's a city hall annex. There's a south annex that's basically trailers. There's the Sunnyvale Office Center. There's that area across the street. So on the north of Olive, across from City Hall, next to the library right now. It's moving all the people that are in those different locations. It's Nova, it's city workers, it's HR, it's the fire inspectors into a single building. So we'll co-locate all the city offices that are in part of the Civic Center into a single location. It's also an addition onto the Department of Public Safety. So that building will have a new emergency operations center and a detectives bureau. It'll also do renovation of certain portions of public safety that are needing an upgrade as far from an operational standpoint. And then it'll be demolishing the existing city hall, the old city annex, south annex, the office center, and ultimately where it'll be creating about 6 acres of plazas and open space. So it'll be a lot more open as far as that civic center is concerned, which will be really nice. So that's on the agenda to be approved. Whether or not there'll be any changes to that. Introduction of an ordinance for the sale of flavored tobacco products, and that's one of the things that uh, you that we kicked off from a council standpoint uh, about a year and a half ago, to basically uh, reduce the ability for flavored tobacco products to be sold within our community, and that's one of the things that is mainly targeting the youth, and so it was trying to get those out of the community as much as possible. Earlier this year, part of that was changed from a state standpoint, and so this is making some of those changes within our local ordinances to reflect what the state is doing, and conceivably going a little bit farther. We will also that Tuesday night be getting the first quarter updates for the budget that we didn't get last week, or at our last meeting. And then, of course, we'll also be approving the master art plan. So this is another thing that I've been trying to move forward, and it's been a while. It's taken a while for it to come back to council, and some of this has to do with community outreach, and of course, from the standpoint of COVID, things got slowed down a little bit. But what the master art plan proposes to do is increase the percent for art requirement, in public art requirement, for any new buildings that are being done. So all of our office buildings, or any city buildings, it will increase that art requirement from 1% to 1.5% of the cost. So that's one of the reasons why we have so much art around the city, is because we have that requirement that any new office building has a certain amount of art added to it. And then the other portion of that art master plan is just kind of general goals that we're going to be doing, programs that could be implemented, and kind of that one of the first programs that would be part of that approval would be approving $50,000 to implement a utility box art project. And so a lot of cities around us have that. All the utility equipment on the streets, on the sidewalks, as opposed to gray or green equipment. Basically having a program to do a community effort to either bring in artists or local artists or community projects to beautify that utility equipment. So painting into interesting designs and things of that nature. I think that I'm a big supporter of the arts, and I think having more art spread throughout our community is really an important thing. People want to see that, and whether or not it's active art, like a bench that's been painted, or just sculptures or murals. You see the 5 murals that are downtown on Murphy Avenue right now. That was part of last year's State of the City, where we brought in 5 muralists to spend a day creating a piece of art that publicizes Sunnyvale. So definitely take a look, and that hopefully the meeting doesn't go too long, and we're actually able to approve that art master plan. That is one of the issues that we have a lot on our agenda, and so hopefully we'll be able to get through all of that. That's it for kind of what's coming up. Let's go ahead and get to the health dashboard on testing and tracing. From a state standpoint, actually from a national standpoint, we hit a new record. So California's been doing fairly well and fairly stable, but we had, from a nationwide standpoint, we had more than 77,000 cases in a single day yesterday. And from a new test case standpoint, from a state standpoint, we've stabilized a little bit. but we've almost reached 900,000 test cases of COVID within the state, and we've had almost 17,000 deaths. So definitely, it is very high, but from that standpoint. Oh wait, hang on. Let's see. From a state standpoint, yeah, we definitely it's high, but ultimately you can do things to help slow that down. From a county standpoint, we had 23,000. We've had now about 23,000 cases. That's up about 800 cases from last week. So we're pretty stable. We've had 700 over the last few weeks, 700, 800. So we're doing fairly well as far as that's concerned. We have had about 385 deaths within the county, and that increased about 18. That increased 18 since last week, and currently have about 92 hospitalizations. So that's up a little bit also. And then by city, San Jose is still the big place where most of the test cases are from the county. They've had 15,609 cases. That's up about 500 from last week. So there been about 400 to 500 for the last few weeks. And from Sunnyvale, we've had 1,043 cases. That's up about 30 since last week. So we're about 20 or 30 every week new cases of COVID-19. So definitely do your part to slow the spread. If you think you've been exposed, get tested. And from a county standpoint, I can continue to do a lot of discussions with county health, with our county supervisors. The county pop-up van, and part of the results of that was bringing the county pop-up van into Sunnyvale and all of the cities in North County here. So that will be in Sunnyvale twice a month going forward, and it's normally the second and fourth Mondays. So this upcoming Monday, October 26th, there's still appointments available, and so all you need to do is go to sccfreetest.org, and you can sign up. And so the upcoming two dates are this Monday, October 26th, and then the second Monday in November, which is November 9th. And you can sign up for an appointment 7 days ahead of time, and they take a certain number of drop-ins depending upon how busy they are. I got tested last week, so last Friday, and being out in the community talking to people, I thought it was really important. The results did come back, and they were it was negative, so that was that was a positive thing for me, because it's like I am meeting a lot more people than I was before. Before it was just takeout, getting food and doing takeout, but now it's walking precincts and mainly doing door drops, but talking to people randomly in the community, whether or not that's at the farmers market or just when I'm walking neighborhoods. So it's important that people, if they feel they've been exposed, if they are an essential worker, if they're a healthcare worker, if they're working in restaurants, it's important that they get tested as much as possible. And one of our healthcare providers, El Camino Hospital, will be doing testing in downtown Sunnyvale on November 10th. So on Monday, November 9th, it'll be at Murphy Park, and on November 10th, there'll be, and I think that also might be at Murphy Park, but they'll be doing reservations sometime soon. But they'll be, and so it's for anyone who lives or goes to school in the El Camino Hospital District, which is covers the majority of Sunnyvale. And so you can contact El Camino Hospital directly, 650-940-7022, in order to sign up for a test, or go to elcaminohealth.org/ let's see if I get this right, COVID test SV downtown. And so I'll be publicizing that more as we get into November and talking about testing. So let's go ahead and get to some of the weekly questions. Let's see. Okay. Sylvie asks, will Murphy Avenue stay closed off for cars even after COVID-19? It creates so much more atmosphere to have the outside terraces, and I totally agree. I've been hearing a lot of positive comments from residents for multiple months now, and so in January I had taken to the Downtown Association uh, the whether or not we could close Murphy Avenue year round on Saturdays. Because we were already doing it 8 weeks out of the year, because 8 weeks there was the farmers market in the morning, and then in the evening there was jazz. So Saturdays during the summer, 8 weeks of jazz, and so they were evaluating that whether or not they would close or request the city to close Murphy Avenue year round. Uh, and then COVID happened, and so at that point, they were basically saying, "Mr. Mayor, how can we work with the city to get this done as quickly as possible?" And we were one of the first cities in the Bay Area to have al fresco dining on Murphy Avenue, and so allowing restaurants to expand outdoors was really important. And so I was talking with the the executive director of the Sunnyvale Downtown Association just yesterday. The board still hasn't made a decision, but in businesses that he's talked to, it's been fairly positive. And so it's really incumbent upon the residents to continue to tell the 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 stores, the restaurants, please, please tell them that you really enjoy that it's what you would like to see, and ultimately they'll be making a decision sometime in the next few months as far as putting in that request to keep Murphy Avenue shut down. And we have heard a lot of questions as far as cleaning that. And one of the things that the city has done, and because of the crows that have been downtown, they have been power washing the streets, not just doing the street sweeper, but which does a little bit of cleaning, but actually power washing Murphy Avenue on a weekly basis now. So if you like it, please, keep telling your businesses that you'd like to see it continue. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that will happen, and I think that's been positive from that standpoint. Another question, and I don't get this question as much anymore because people are seeing the signs. When is Whole Foods opening? The signage is up. It will be opening next Thursday, October 29th. So after years of talking about having another market downtown and kind of what that phase one of City Line and the new mall was going to be, that was going to be bringing a market into downtown, where we've added a lot more apartments, where we've added a lot more homes over the last few years. So that will be happening next Thursday. So I think that's a really big step forward for our downtown, because once Whole Foods opens, there's multiple other restaurants and stores that will be opening along McKinley. And so you see a list of those restaurants as you go by. Some of the signage has started to go up, and it was kind of just having that anchor tenant that's there, and once Whole Foods opens, you'll start seeing other things happening. So great times to be in downtown, and seeing what can finally finishing what started almost 20 years ago, as far as what the vision of our new downtown is, with the redoing the street grid, which had been taken out in the 60s, the beginning of the 70s, when the old mall went in, having a park, having other kind of places to shop, places to go to. I think that'll be really positive from a Sunnyvale standpoint. What's happening with our playground? So this is kind of a callback, and probably one of the last times we talk about this, but we reopened a lot of the playgrounds at the beginning of September, after the county changed some of its health orders and clarified a few things. So we had 4 playgrounds open. About 2 weeks ago, we opened up. Over the last 2 weeks, we've continued opening up playgrounds, and all of them now have the appropriate signage that, parents and children should maintain safe social distance as much as possible. They need to wear a face mask. Children should sanitize their hands before and after using the playground equipment. So that signage has gone up around all of our playgrounds. And there was a little bit of cleaning and safety inspections that had to be done and before we put up that signage and open them up. Several other cities have started following suit. So Mountain View, Santa Clara, Cupertino have started opening up their playgrounds. San Jose has kept the majority of their parks and playground areas closed. And just today, so finally, San Jose has opened up about a quarter of their playgrounds. Although they were saying that they were expecting that the residents were going to be cleaning down playgrounds. So I don't know what their full signage is, but finally you have a lot more place for kids to go within the county while they're doing remote learning to kind of get some exercise and get outside of their home when they can. Is voting safe? I'm worried about the election. So we're a week and a half away from election day, and so 5.8 million people in California have already voted, and ballots arrived about 2 or 3 weeks ago at this point. So if you have any questions, you can always go to about where you can turn in your ballot. You can go to sccvote.org. So Santa Clara County, sccvote.org, to learn more information about either where you can turn in your ballots, if you need a replacement ballot, if you need to register to vote. Right now you can do that at the county offices, and from the Voters' Choice Act, you're able to turn in your ballot multiple locations. So everybody who's registered should get a mail-in ballot. You can then either mail that in, and a lot of people have already voted, so thanks to all of you who've voted already. And you can track your ballot online. There's ways of doing that, but you can also there are certain multiple drop boxes within the city, and those are being picked up multiple locations. And for those of you that had any questions about some of the locations, that like at the library, now there's 2 different ballot boxes there. There's the old one that's always been there, and now there's a new one. Just because of the quantity of ballots that we've been getting, they've actually installed a second ballot box at the library. And so you can go to let's see, what's all the different ballot drop off boxes are at the library, the City Hall Annex, where you turn in your water bill, Valley Medical on Fair Oaks, the Sunnyvale Community Center, and Sunnyvale Presbyterian Church on Fremont Avenue. So all of them have ballot boxes where you can currently drop off, and they're now being picked up on a daily basis because of the number of ballots being returned. So from that standpoint, you can drop those off now. A week from tomorrow, and that's around the city, we'll have voting centers, and so we'll have around the county, we'll have about 100 different voting centers. But within the city, much like you can do at the county registrar's office right now in San Jose, you will have a place where you can get a replacement ballot, where you can turn in your ballot, where you can actually register to vote starting Halloween. If you're not registered to vote, that's one thing that you can do. And those voting centers will be at Washington Park, Braley Park, Fair Oaks Park, and then again Sunnyvale Community Center, Sunnyvale Middle School Library, Columbia Middle School Library, and Cupertino Middle School Library. So kind of spread around the city, north and south. You can go in and get a ballot, get a replacement ballot, or just register to vote if you haven't done that already. So last election about 80% of the votes were returned by mail, and probably even more so this election. And so, definitely we're seeing a lot of voter turnout, and that's really good. Make your voice heard. Go out and vote as much as you can, and whether or not that's the drop boxes or just mail-in ballots. As long as you mail your ballot by or on election day, so it does have to be postmarked November 3rd, but you then have 17 days, so up until the November 20th, for the county register to actually receive those ballots. So that is, um, that's an important time, that if there are any slowdowns with the post office, and I've heard people that have mailed it and it's been there within about 3 or 4 days. So right now, the post office is delivering and getting those ballots to the county register as quickly as possible, and you can track your ballot and figure out when it's been picked up and all that. So that's valid also. Um, what can I do for your campaign? Best thing you can do, of course, is get the word out. You can go to larryformayor.com and sign up. You can tell your friends and neighbors, or you can email them. But getting that word out is critical. Uh, Taking yard signs, nice. You can donate, but if you go online, you can then get a kind of a sample email that you can then forward to people, to tell people uh, why you should vote, and hopefully what your mayor's been doing for the last 7 months, as well as kind of what I've been doing for Sunnyvale for the last 4 years on council. So I think that's important, just to get people a better understanding of who their current mayor is, and why hopefully you should vote for him. One of the other questions I got is, why is the utility bill so high? It keeps um, getting voted to increase. And so, this year we didn't increase our rates as far as our trash is concerned. We didn't increase our water our water rates. We did increase our wastewater treatment plant. So from a wastewater standpoint, we did increase that. But of the three different things that usually, and this is the whole thing, all those rates are there to cover costs. And so it's not like there's a lot of money going into the city coffers to cover these. These are basically utility rates, and these are basically a zero-sum game. There's a fund that takes making sure that there's a slight fund to defer in case rates go up, because we get water like from different sources. If they decide to raise the rates more, then we need to keep a little money back in order to cover that. And it covers infrastructure. The wastewater treatment plant is currently under complete renovation. This is one of the biggest projects from a city standpoint that we've ever done, and that's one of the reasons why our wastewater rates did go up this year. But from a garbage standpoint, it actually went down last year for a lot of people, mainly because the number of people that were part of food cycle, that for those people that were separating the food out of their garbage and putting it into their food cycle program for single family residences, that made a big difference as far as, one thing, the amount of waste that went into the landfill and were charged per ton was actually a lot less because the food wasn't there. And then food actually has a lot of water weight, and so if we're pulling that out of the waste stream early on, and there were several different things that we're doing with it, one of which is helping to uh, basically fuel the wastewater treatment plant. But pulling it out of the waste stream meant that whatever was going into the landfill weighed a lot less. So that was positive. So last year we actually lowered part of our rates, like our garbage, and then this year we didn't raise the garbage rates, or the water rates, and a lot of that was then advocating with Santa Clara County or Silicon Valley Water and the SFPUC to make sure that they didn't increase their rates, which luckily they didn't during this time of COVID. So from a increase standpoint, the only increases that you should have seen, at least as far as this year is concerned, is wastewater, and that's to cover the ongoing replacement and infrastructure required for the wastewater treatment plant. That facility is about 60 years old and has been having more and more issues as far as the equipment is still kind of knobs and I was actually really surprised to see how old some of that equipment was, and it's actually became more and more expensive to actually replace. And so what we're doing is increasing capacity as well as updating that system as far as the quality of water and how that water is being treated. So that wastewater would almost be potable, and at the end of this project, conceivably saying, do we want to make it potable, will be one of the overall questions. One of the questions I got was, how can I get more involved? And so this comes up every, when I meet with residents, it's always, what can I do to give back to the city? And there's lots of ways, there's nonprofits. Leadership Sunnyvale is a great way to get a better idea of how the city operates. And of course, there's also boards and commissions. And so we go through a quarterly application process for our boards and commissions. And so right now we have 2 open positions, and once you apply, your application is kept online. And so if there's an opening in one of the commissions that you're interested in, and we have a wide variety of commissions, from the Art Commission to Bicycle Pedestrian Advocacy, Parks, Library, a lot of different things. 2 of the commissions that currently have openings on them are the Board of Building Code Appeals and the Heritage Preservation Commission. And so those applications are due by Friday, October 30th, so 5 p.m. next Friday. And then ultimately there will be interviews scheduled for the middle of November. And general eligibility requirements are Sunnyvale residency and voter registration. So you can go to the city, you can go to search for on the city website boards and commissions, or you can always contact our city clerk to request an application. Let's see. Well, we're already after 10 o'clock. So let me go ahead and, let's do one quick thing. Since we're a week away from Halloween, I do want to touch base very quickly on Halloween. What's Halloween going to look like this year? And so the county, a few weeks ago, released health guidelines for Halloween, and it's mainly highly recommending community members participate in lower risk activities to celebrate Halloween and Dia de los Muertos. And that lower risk, of course, is stay home, keep celebrations small. So, within your family or conceivably within safely distanced family operations in your neighborhood. So, pumpkin carving in the backyard where 2 families are staying within their same bubble. Doing a costume contest, and like the Sunnyvale Pet Parade, submitting your family dressed up in photos to that, or conceivably decorating your home, or doing a parade through the city to see decorations for different that different homes have done. But whatever you can do to kind of prevent that, not doing candy pickup or anything of that nature. So that's definitely passing out candy shouldn't be allowed. But some people have already said that they're going to be putting candy at the end of a table, and separate little packages of candy so that kids could pick it up. But that's all dependent upon what the neighborhoods are interested in. The best thing to do is wear your mask, and I have a special mask for Halloween. But from that standpoint, dressing up, staying within your safe social bubble, and taking photos and sharing them, I think that's critical. Whatever you want to do, maintain safe social distance as much as possible, and do hand sanitizer, do all the things that you're doing on a daily basis to slow the spread as much as possible. Okay, with that, let's go ahead and wrap up. Thanks again for joining me this week. As always, I'm proud of Sunnyvale's response to the pandemic. I know it continues to be difficult. New issues come up every week, but your response has made a difference, and continue to make a difference. Help your neighbors, build community, make and share masks, mow your neighbor's lawn, share baked goods, write positive chalk messages or put positive messages in your window. Continue to build community and help others, especially during these difficult times. I'm proud to see Sunnyvale residents pulling together to help out their neighbors, to help out strangers, to deliver food and pick up medicine. If you're out on a walk, wave, say hello from a safe social distance. People miss that continual social interaction. Sunnyvale will emerge from this as a stronger community. We are in this together. We will get through this together. Thanks for listening. And until next week, of course, stay safe, wear your mask, and have fun. Have a good weekend. Take care. Goodbye. See ya.